Now we've added in the background step, which is running an auto launch flow to do automatic case classification. And this is great because it's fully automated. It doesn't require any input from the user. So it's a perfect example of the type of automation that we're trying to get from Orchestrator and from flows. But there may be cases where the automatic case classification fails, and there's some cases it can't handle, so it can't figure out the proper case reason. And so we want to add in a second step for manual case classification. And that's where interactive steps are great, because these are steps where you actually need a person to come in and complete a screen flow, which is Salesforce Flow's version of forms. And so for this step, what we want to do is we're just going to call it manual case classification. And this time we're going to be running a screen flow. And with interactive steps, there are quite a few options and a few more options that we didn't have for background steps because of the manual human-based nature of the step. And so the conditions are identical to background steps. You can start this interactive step when the stage starts. And if you have multiple steps set to this condition, then they're all going to start in parallel. You can start it sequentially after another step is marked complete, which is what we want to do. We don't want to do this until the automatic case classification has completed. And we also need to specify a flow. With background steps, we only specify auto launch flows, but with interactive steps, we can only specify screen flows. And so we have a simple case classification screen flow, which we're going to specify. We can set the input values for this as well. We want to input the case from this orchestration. And this is new for interactive steps, this record page. The way interactive steps work are by assigning screen flows to the assigned user, and those screen flows need to be completed on a page in your Salesforce org. And so the page that we use is any record page that you specify here. Since this is a case classification and it's highly related to the case in question here, we're going to specify the record ID for the case that's being classified so that when the user who is assigned this step has to go in and complete it, they can do it from the record page of the related case. Now that all makes sense so far, so let's look at who would actually want to complete this step. And so the way that we're going to assign this is you can have one of 6 options: user, group, queue, or a resource to any of them. And so let's say you know that you're going to assign this step to the same user every time. Well, then that's great. You can just click user and put in that user's name. And every time this step runs, it'll be assigned to the exact same user. But usually that's not the case. You want to assign this dynamically to some sort of user variable. And so in this case, we're going to assign this step back to the owner of the case record. So basically the person who created it. And the way that you want to do this is by clicking record, clicking on owner user, and then you want to specify the username, not the user ID. Additionally, if you want to do assignments with group or queue resources dynamically, you're going to want to specify the group or queue dev name, not the plain English text name and not the ID. It should all be username or dev name format. Lastly, you can specify an exit condition for an interactive step, which is something that you couldn't do for a background step. And this is also useful because maybe you have cases where you want this step to complete on its own, even if the person assigned didn't complete the associated screen flow. And so you could do that with an evaluation flow. And again, we'll get into evaluation flows in a later video. But for now, we're just going to set the exit condition to when the assigned user has completed the screen flow, the step is marked complete. So that way, as soon as the user fills out the associated screen flow, we move on from here. And that's how you create an interactive step.